Introduction. Why go back to 1999? There are many reasons to return to 1999, but the most important one is this. The world was hopeful in a way that is difficult to explain now. Not quietly hopeful, not cautiously optimistic, but openly, collectively, almost ceremonially hopeful. The approach of the year 2000 was not just a date change. It was treated as a global event, a once-in-a-lifetime threshold that humanity would cross together. The new millennium carried emotional weight far beyond its numerical significance. People didn't just observe the countdown. They traveled for it. Some flew halfway around the world to stand on beaches in the Pacific, waiting for the first sunrise of the year 2000 to touch the earth. Others gathered in city squares, on rooftops, along harbors, and beside landmarks, watching massive clocks tick down the final seconds of the 20th century. There were fireworks on a scale rarely seen before or since. Concerts, broadcasts, and celebrations linked time zones together in a rolling wave of anticipation that moved westward across the planet. For one night, arguably one moment, the world felt synchronized. It was as if humanity had agreed implicitly that this mattered, that the crossing itself meant something. That stepping into the new millennium wasn't just symbolic but significant. A reset, a beginning. A clean break from the complications and traumas of the previous century. The mood was unmistakable. The future was going to be better. This collective excitement shaped how people thought, spoke, and predicted. It created an atmosphere in which imagining a transformed world felt not only reasonable, but inevitable. The 20th century had delivered extraordinary progress: electricity, aviation, antibiotics, computers, spaceflight, and it was easy to believe that the 21st would accelerate that arc even further. Faster, smarter, cleaner, kinder, more connected. The future, in 1999, was not something to brace for. It was something to look forward to. That emotional context matters because predictions do not emerge in a vacuum. They are shaped not just by data and trends, but by mood, by what a society wants to believe is possible. In 1999, optimism was not naive. It was ambient. It filled newspapers, television specials, keynote speeches, and best-selling books. It showed up in the way timelines were stated confidently, without caveats. In the way words like inevitable, unstoppable, and revolutionary were used casually, almost generously. This was the environment in which millennium predictions were made. Yes, there was anxiety. Y2K cast a strange shadow over the celebrations, a quiet worry that something somewhere might break when the clocks rolled over. Governments ran drills. Banks prepared contingencies. Engineers worked long nights. But even this fear reinforced the sense that the moment was consequential. If the date itself could disrupt systems, then the date itself must be powerful. And when nothing catastrophic happened at midnight, when the lights stayed on, the planes stayed in the air, the ATMs kept working, it only amplified the optimism. The first moments of the year 2000 felt like a collective exhale, a confirmation. We had crossed the threshold safely. Now the future could begin. It is difficult to overstate how rare that feeling was, and how unlikely it is to return in the same form. In hindsight, 1999 sits at a unique historical intersection. It came after the Cold War but before the War on Terror. After globalization had accelerated, but before its fractures became visible. After the internet had proven itself transformative, but before its social and political consequences were fully understood. It was a moment when progress felt linear, benevolent, and broadly shared. From within that moment, prediction felt almost like a responsibility. Futurists, technologists, business leaders, policymakers, and journalists all tried to answer the same question: what comes next? And because the mood was expansive, the answers tended to be bold. Print would disappear, cash would vanish, work would be automated, disease would be tamed, borders would soften, information would flatten hierarchies. The world would become more rational, more efficient, more connected. These predictions were not fringe ideas. They appeared in mainstream magazines, government reports, corporate strategies, and best-selling books. They were discussed seriously and confidently, often with timelines attached. They shaped how companies invested, how governments planned, and how ordinary people imagined their own futures. Going back to 1999 allows us to recover that mindset, not to romanticize it, but to understand it. From the vantage point of January 2026, we now know how the story unfolded. We have lived through the dot-com crash, global financial crises, pandemics, geopolitical fragmentation, and the messy realities of digital life. We have seen technology succeed in ways no one predicted and stall where progress seemed inevitable. We have learned, sometimes painfully, that capability does not guarantee adoption, and that human systems bend technology as much as technology reshapes them. That hindsight is precisely why this is the right moment to look back. This book does not ask whether the people of 1999 were foolish. They were not. Their predictions were grounded in real trends and genuine breakthroughs. What they underestimated was not intelligence or effort, but complexity, how slowly institutions move, how power concentrates, how culture resists optimization, and how unevenly the future distributes itself. By returning to 1999, we strip away what we now take for granted and stand once more at the edge of the millennium, surrounded by fireworks, countdown clocks, and shared anticipation. We look forward with the same information they had, feel the same confidence they felt, and then, only then, step back to assess what actually happened. This is not a book about failed predictions. It is a book about expectation, how it forms, why it feels so convincing, and how it shapes the futures we end up living in. The future did arrive, but it arrived in pieces, at different speeds, with compromises and trade-offs that were invisible in 1999's glow. To understand that gap between the future we imagined and the world we inhabit now, we have to begin where the optimism was strongest. That is why we go back to 1999.